Welcome to the Practitioner's Perspectives video series for the What Works Clearinghouse Practice Guide on Effective Advising for Post-Secondary Students. These on-demand videos are designed to bring in practitioners from the field to share their on-the-ground experience in implementing the practice guide recommendations. My name is Yifeng Chang, and I am a researcher at Apt Associates and the Deputy Project Director of the What Works Clearinghouse Post-Secondary Contract funded by IES. Today, for our first video, I am joined by Dr. Joe O'Shea, a member of the expert panel who helped to develop the practice guide. Dr. Joe O'Shea is the Dean of Undergraduate Studies and Assistant Provost at Florida State University. In this role, he is the academic dean for most first and second year students and leads the university's nationally recognized student success initiatives. Dr. O'Shea is an author and served as the president of the board of the Gap Year Association and is an elected board member for the Council on Undergraduate Research. We are also very pleased today to be joined by three expert practitioners who will share their thoughts about Recommendation 1. Dr. Deontay Brown is the Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Studies and the current Director of the Center for Academic Retention and Enhancement at Florida State University. Prior to joining FSU, Dr. Brown served as the Assistant Dean of Students at Clemson University and taught classes at Clemson's College of Education. He is no stranger to FSU, having participated in CARE's Upward Bound program as a high school student, and then spent 4 years working for CARE, 3 of those years as the Upward Bound program coordinator. His experience centers around equity, diversity, and inclusion for underrepresented student retention and success. Dr. Kathleen Shea Smith is the Associate Provost for Academic Advising at the University of Oklahoma. In this role, she oversees institutional advising systems to ensure student-centered outcomes. She contributes to the institution's retention initiatives and coordinates academic life coaching to enhance advising delivery systems. Dr. Shea Smith is the current president of the Coaching in Higher Education Consortium and has over 30 years of experience in advising. And Dr. Tadaro Stark is the Associate Vice Provost for Student Success at the University of Connecticut. He has over 20 years of experience in educational access, equity, retention, and success in higher education. Prior to joining UConn, Dr. Stark was the former director and department chair of the Florida State University's CARE program, where he held this role for 8 years. And then prior to that, he was the program administrator and director for Take Stock in Children and the College Reach Out program at Tallahassee Community College. These are 2 college access programs supporting traditionally underrepresented students in reaching their goal of a college education. So thank you everyone for joining us and welcome. First, I want to briefly introduce Recommendation 1 and its evidence rating. The first recommendation in this practice guide is to intentionally design and deliver comprehensive integrated advising that incorporates academic and non-academic supports to empower students to reach their educational goals. The What Works Clearinghouse team and the expert panel assigned Recommendation 1 a moderate level of evidence, which means that there is some evidence meeting What Works Clearinghouse standards that the practices improve student outcomes, but there may be ambiguity about whether that improvement is the direct result of the practices or whether the findings can be replicated with a diverse population of students. This rating was based on 8 studies of comprehensive integrated advising interventions implemented with post-secondary students in the United States. 4 out of the 8 studies meet What Works Clearinghouse Group Design Standards without reservations, and the other 4 meet What Works Clearinghouse Group Design Standards with reservations. The evidence from these 8 studies provides a direct test of the recommendation, as the interventions deliver advising that is part or connected to a comprehensive support structure in 4 different ways. One of them being offering academic supports in the form of tutoring, developmental or supplemental education, college success courses, or academic workshops. 2, extending financial supports for tuition through scholarships, tuition waivers, or financial aid. 3, providing Other financial supports such as transportation assistance, emergency funds, or free textbooks. And 4, hosting community building activities such as social events and community service projects. For each recommendation, the practice guide provides details about the recommended practice, including how the panel arrived at the level of evidence rating, guidance about how to carry out the recommendation, potential obstacles and solutions, and tools and resources to support carrying out the recommendation. The practice guide also offers 6 steps on how to carry out recommendation 1. The first step is to situate advising as a core function in alignment with the mission and goals of the institution. For this to happen, advising needs to be integrated within a broader structure of student supports. Advising leadership should coordinate with other offices and staff that provide student supports by participating in planning committees, student affair meetings, and other groups that make decisions on the college's mission and goals, staffing, and budgetary priorities. Second, determine what supports students need and whether there are gaps and overlaps in the supports currently available. Institutions can conduct a process mapping exercise to identify the processes and requirements students must complete as they progress toward graduation and highlight the most significant processes that students interact with during their college journey. Institutions can then link the academic, financial, social, and emotional supports available to students to help them navigate each step of the process and work on strengthening the support. The third step is to design comprehensive advising to meet the individual needs of a diverse student population. Meeting the needs of students can require a broad range of student supports, and the practice guide provides a number of examples of the range of student supports that were provided in the intervention studied. Step 4 is to clearly define the roles and responsibilities of the different staff delivering student supports and ensure close collaboration among those staff. Providing comprehensive advising involves a range of staff and faculty across campus, such as advisors, coaches, counselors, peer and faculty members, tutors, and other student support staff. It is important to clearly articulate the roles and responsibilities of the staff and faculty delivering the supports. And as I mentioned, the process mapping earlier, this process map can also help to identify and designate individuals responsible for each stage of the process. The next step is to clearly communicate the full range of student supports available to them. The process map here can also help as it creates a visual for students that clearly lays out the processes and requirements that students must complete and the available supports along the way. And the final step is to continuously monitor student engagement with academic and non-academic supports. Ongoing monitoring and evaluation of students' engagement and experiences with advising will help the institution to continuously develop and improve its student supports. Technology tools can be useful here for monitoring how and to the extent to which students are accessing these support services. So with all that said, I am now going to turn the presentation over to Joe, who will moderate a conversation with our experts and really bring the recommendations and these how-to steps to life.
Great. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It is really great to be here with such thoughtful and talented colleagues whom I've worked with over the years. Thank you all so much for being part of our panel today. As we have reviewed so far, recommendation 1 suggests institutions should intentionally design and deliver comprehensive integrated advising that incorporates academic and non-academic supports to empower students to reach their educational goals. To start, Kathleen, I'm curious what part of that recommendation resonates most closely with the work that you do and why?
Yes, thank you, Joe. I am so passionate about training and really empowering advisors to provide this holistic, comprehensive support. I would say that over the years that my signature advising approach has really been integrating academic life coaching with academic advising. And I have trained advisors at the University of Oklahoma, across the state of Oklahoma, and also even just nationally, we're doing more and more of just getting this message out that academic life coaching is a way to provide support and assistance across all the areas that affect academic success and degree completion. And it's a little challenging when you think about a large institution and the number of advisors who serve in different departments. And so I always wanted to have a coordinated approach. And so this academic life coaching approach has been really the answer, because what we've been able to do is take the advisors and really initiate them into this way of operating with students. We call it almost like a way of being with students. And while also just honoring that the way that higher ed is structured is that there are unique cultures and there are unique departments that all kind of have their own resources and their own historical ways that they operate. So by taking something and really coordinating the campus, I think it's a really effective approach instead of trying to centralize everything. So I have partnered with an International Coach Federation accredited program, and that's the ICF, which is really the gold standard for life coaching. And when I came to the University of Oklahoma, I wanted to basically delegate the training and to provide the depth of training for our academic advising community to be able to have conversations with our students that really dealt with the different aspects, again, like that affect student success. So we know that financial pressures are there. We know that students struggle with finding the right major and then also starting to plan their career path. We know that they're trying to find that place of identity and belonging. And so this academic life coaching model is really the way that we address these different aspects in meeting our students one-on-one. So our academic advisors use these coaching techniques in their everyday work, but then we also have built what we call this coaching coalition, where advisors are working specifically with a group of students, everyone who's been part of this, and works one-on-one with a group of students every 2 to 3 weeks to provide this intensive, really mentoring support as well. And so it's not just advisors now. We are trying to create almost a culture of coaching at the University of Oklahoma. There's been so much interest in buy-in. We have now trained faculty members, administrators, trio coordinators, so that again, it's this unified approach that exists within the advising culture, but also outside of it. So it's pretty exciting. And up to, at this point, we've coached over 5,000 students. And, we're continuing to go strong, and we're hoping that we can just continue to grow it and provide as much support and training to the people who are supporting students.
It's wonderful, incredible work. Thank you, Kathleen. Deontay, would you like to follow up?
Sure. Thank you all so much for having me. In my work, I've done a lot with our underrepresented student population. So whether they're first gen, low income, or racial and ethnic minoritized students. And something I've learned is that the emphasis on the academic and non-academic supports is vital to students who are experiencing marginalization on our college campuses. And so this emphasis has created opportunities for us to recognize that the academic performance is sometimes impacted by what's going on outside of the classroom for them. And so whether we're, talking to students who are experiencing food insecurity or experiencing homelessness, these factors will show up in their ability to perform. And so if we're combining the academic support with the non-academic, we're truly focusing on the whole student. And so through our work, and I have to attribute my foundation to the work of CARE and FSU, and how I approach this is that we have to have partners across campus. I can't do it alone. The staff and CARE can't do it alone. And so as we learn about the resources that are here and in our conversations with students, we can connect them to the case management services. We can connect them to the career center. We can connect them to the food pantry or the career clothing closet. But we can also have some of those resources available in-house for our students, which we do in CARE. And so it just shows them that there's a network around them and that we're not just looking at them to perform in the classroom. We know that life happens. And so when we emphasize those two pieces, we truly commit to their success as a human being and not just as a student on our campus. And so with that, you know, I've also found that engaging their peers is a key part of this. You know, at CARE, we have our CARE ambassadors who help with that transition of our new students over the summer, as well as in a number of other peer leadership roles. And that's the same model I've had at Clemson, where we had peer mentors who were doing some of that same support in that transition. But they know the resources. They know about the academics. They've engaged with faculty. They've gone to the advisors. They also have figured out the hacks of how to thrive and survive as a college student. And so it's important that we also include them in that integrated approach so that they can share the knowledge that they have about being a successful college student.
Great points. Very, very important. Thank you, Deontay. Sidero, would you like to go next?
Yes. First, let me again also thank you all for the opportunity today. With this recommendation, you know, addressing the needs of diverse students really stood out to me. You know, being at UConn as the Associate Vice Provost, I have to consider how we engage all of our students from all backgrounds and on 5 campuses. So I really do rely heavily on my background working with first gen and students from other underrepresented backgrounds, where holistic advising and supporting them was essential to student success. For me, advising has to go beyond academics and go really into non-classroom issues that students face. For underrepresented students, for example, we need to understand what's going on at home, what motivates them to be in college, what's their why. Students' decisions to stay in school are heavily influenced by what happens back home and what is their support system. They need to support and stay connected at home. It's a lure and a pull for them to really decide whether they stay at school and really at a minimum whether they perform academically. Likewise, many of the students' why involve someone or something back home that's pushing them to stay in school, or that same person could pull them to want to come back home. But unfortunately, in higher education, we really emphasize separating people from their families and really push the building of independence, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it may present a clash where it's working against what you're trying to achieve in advising and the student's background. It also presents a need for advising that understands and knows how to negotiate these conflicting ideologies. Because if you can do so, you can tap into a source of motivation for the student and increase the ability to support that student throughout their academic journey. In my personal experiences, and most recently with my role at Florida State in CARE, I was directly engaged with services that focus on students who were socioeconomically disadvantaged and first generation. And when you combine that with the dynamics of the South and income in the South, the makeup of the students we served was heavily minoritized. So this informed, though, how we engage students in our advising. Advising went beyond basic academic advising and really went into better understanding the cause behind a student's academic decisions. For example, a student who may have not necessarily been exposed to a lot of different careers and pathways may choose their majors based off income potential, or rather than looking at their personal interests or their passions. Many students that we work with will talk about they don't want to struggle how they may have before they came to college. So because of this, we designed our systems to better be informed by the student and what they were going through, and to help them connect their academic and career goals to their true desires, and helping them find their own voice, if you will. When a student could see the possibilities and really see what was really possible, and they could align with their personal and professional needs, the advisor can have such a more robust conversation and a better interaction with that student to help them to, again, find their voice. You know, I also think that the intentional design has to also consider the student community. We know peers influence retention, and representation in the student body is so important for students, particularly from underrepresented populations. Advising relies so heavily on students developing a sense of community and making connections on campus and making connections with others who share similar experiences and interests. When at Florida State, our office designed very diverse approaches to recruiting and engaging students, and incorporated our advisors in the process of the designing those systems. We established our recruiting system, Care Guides and Delegates, where they would go to their home communities and support helping students to apply to college and show that our institution was an option. With the Office of Admissions, we also built a high school partner program to work with targeted schools with helping students to apply to college, finish their financial aid applications, engage parents and everything, really to bridge that access barrier. And by leveraging our college students and their experiences, we were able to help be a driving force behind FSU's diversity efforts and really present, again, the institution as an option. But it created a welcoming environment that showed these students that when they arrived, they were in a supportive, atmosphere. It helped them to really see that they could create community, that we wanted them there and that they could thrive. And it built on the foundation that allowed our advisors to have really substantive engagement with our students.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Tadaro, and thank you all for such great responses and thoughts. Now let's turn to the first how-to step under this recommendation. What does it look like in practice for an institution to situate advising as a core function in alignment with the mission and goals of the institution? Deontay, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So at FSU, one of our 6 pillars of student success has been having a success team behind every student. And that success team includes our academic advisors. I would say, they are the essential members of that student success team. They're with them from orientation, sometimes before orientation, when students are thinking about enrolling, applying, they reach out to advisors to learn about the academic program of study. And so our advisors are providing information throughout that matriculation process consistently until they walk across that stage. And so it's important that they see how they are situated within the focus of the university. At FSU, our advisors are a part of our Council for Informed Advisors. And so leadership will show up to those meetings to talk with them, to gain information and insight. We don't always get it right, but we have to learn from the people who are on the front line. And so we provide them the opportunity to connect with us on key issues. Here at Florida State, we recently elevated our Director of Advising First role to an Assistant Dean position. And so that person now will sit at the table with other assistant and associate deans to talk about what's happening in the advising community, to share feedback, to problem solve. When there's opportunities for new initiatives, such as new academic technology to be implemented, we know our advisors will be among the first to use that. And so gaining their insight is very important to our work. And so we do a lot to have conversations, to gain their feedback, to empower them to make the decisions that will support that student's success. And so we really appreciate the work that they do. Again, we know we don't always get it right with some of our decisions, but we learn from that, and we learn through our advisors sharing up those case studies. Sometimes it takes one story to create change, and our advisors have those stories that they know from working with a student that has faced some of the most rigorous challenges. Just today, we learned of a student who is, working through her mom having a terminal diagnosis. And so our advising team is wrapping their arms around that student to find all the resources, sharing up. We talk about being a part of the mission. We know we want to support our students to become the best person they can be. Advisors are doing that every day. And so we have to then make sure we're supporting them and listening and giving them the platform to speak with us and speak up.
Great. Great perspective. Thank you, Deontay. And I think it's a great time to transition to Kathleen and some of the work that she's doing at Oklahoma. Kathleen, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, sure, Joe. And I just want to reiterate what Deontay said about how important it is for someone who represents academic advising to be at the leadership table, because advisors are so knowledgeable about the day-to-day functions of the institution and the things that are happening that can prevent students from progressing or graduating, kind of recognizing those systems. And, you know, what I've really seen is, you know, some things that are a little bit troubling, because I can say this now because I've been in the field for a long time, that advisors are being asked to do more and more. You know, we've said this, that advisors are there at the point of recruitment. They're giving recruitment sessions, all the way advising, supporting, you know, reaching out. We're doing a lot of enrollment outreach for our students when they're not enrolled. So much on the front lines, all the way to processing those graduation applications and making sure that students are crossing the finish line. So they're, to me, they're playing more and more of a critical role. Yet what I'm seeing is that the turnover rate is high because advisors are not necessarily getting paid what they need to be paid. They're not given some of the independence that other entities of the institution are given and afforded. And also, I just think that we need to have structures in place that where advisors know that if they do their work and that they grow professionally and they engage with the profession, because there are so many opportunities to engage, and we've built a lot of opportunities at OU for that, that they will get recognized and they will advance. So I think it's important for institutions to prioritize career plans and advancement structures so that advisors can progress in ways that we really want them to, whether it's presenting at a national conference or writing or supporting all of these different ways that they can get involved and continuously contribute to the institution. And I just want to say that we have assessments where we ask advisors to just tell us how they're doing and to speak up. And what I've been hearing, really across the country, not just at OU, but that advisors sometimes don't feel valued for all the contributions they're making, and that advisors sometimes feel invisible. Some advisors aren't even invited to departmental meetings. So we're really trying to change that and promote advising and make sure that it's elevated and it's represented at the table. And I think that that is just such a critical thing. And at the same time, that honoring that the institution has limited resources. And so, just really that balancing act, but also, we have a strategic plan at OU that we just unveiled over the last year. We're really proud of it, and making sure that the work that we're doing in advising is also reflecting that strategic plan for the institution. So really working together cooperatively so that we can all win.
Thank you, Kathleen. So Daryl, do you have other thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I agree with what my colleagues have said. One of the things at UConn, we've looked to try to really operate under this banner called Life Transformative Education. And advising is a critical and necessary component of making sure that our students maximize their experiences and really realize success here and beyond. Within that, we have a decentralized model of advising, but we really have a collaborative approach to our advising efforts. We have centralized staff to help colleges and schools with advising the pre-major and admitted students, but we also provide diverse training opportunities to help them with their effectiveness for the advisors in the majors. We also have a standing committee of advisors and administrators and faculty and staff. We get everyone together who can talk about how we can better enhance our advising systems, how we can leverage data to better inform our services and our practice. And we really try to see how we can increase student engagement and experiential learning and promote equity across that. We also talk about how to increase student engagement in activities and other resources and connecting them to things across campus that can help them to thrive when they're here. One of the things I do love here is that there's a very robust advising platform that was developed in-house that really connects our advisors from all of the units, as well as our advisors that are in student affairs and athletics and career services and elsewhere. The advising platform has dedicated staff who are plugged into the advising system that meets regularly with our advisors and our advising leadership. It connects to our central database, and it also includes things like engagement modules like mentoring or study group development and things of that nature. So it really helps us to reinforce and operate advising as a holistic approach to the student success. Within my division here at UConn, we really look at ourselves as more holistic and generalists. We train our advisors in the Institute for Student Success to really engage students from across all majors, but also really to help promote students' engagement outside of the classroom. Advising is not a prescriptive approach. It requires the student to be actively engaged and to be involved in the process. We have programs like the Major Experience where we really take a personalized approach to advising that goes beyond just exploratory advising and helping a student who doesn't have a major, but we've expanded that to really help with students who are unsure or firmly declared, to really help them identify ways to maximize their experiences within the majors they've chosen. For students on probation, our Academic Achievement Center combines mentoring and advising, similar to what Kathleen talked about earlier. It really tries to help provide a holistic and well-rounded academic support model to help the students recommit or reevaluate their major choices in their academic journey. We engage non-traditional students through our Bachelor's of General Studies to really help them not only talk about how to finish their degree, but how to supplement their learning experiences and create a plan to balance their needs as non-traditional students. And then through our Center for Academic Programs that focuses on underrepresented populations, we focus a lot of our advising around what we call the 4 pillars. Advising is really channeled through themes of academic development, personal development, professional development, and overall well-being. And we use this to provide advising to students or to even create new programs and services and guide students to other resources that really fit within the themes of those areas.
Great. Thank you all. And as you all articulated so powerfully and clearly, really situating advising at the core of an institution means that the advising teams have to be empowered to innovate and to share ideas with the institution. And as we've seen, advisors work so closely with students, and that uniquely allows them to see issues and to elevate them, to notice patterns in what's happening at the institution, and then inform the rest of the institution about what's happening and propose ideas or policy changes or new programs or faults in our design of our educational system or educational supports. But to do that, to have that level of communication and collaboration, we really need to make sure our institutions involve and recognize our advisors as professionals and provide paths for them, as Kathleen articulated, for them to advance in their careers as they do their work. Deontay, I'd like for you to start and to share ways about what we are doing at FSU to really empower our advisors here.
Yeah, so at FSU, we have advisors that may fall into 2 categories. One of those being our advising first advisors, and those are hired centrally through our undergraduate studies department division, but those advisors are placed in the various colleges. And so they're working closely with college leadership, department, chairs, faculty to support students. And we also have departmental advisors, which are hired directly by our college. And so in some instances, colleges have both, or some colleges may choose to only have one type of advisors. So there's a lot of different approaches to what advising looks like. But one of the things that's very important in this work and making sure that our advisors are feeling empowered to do the work is through that CIA, that Council for Informed Advisors. That's an opportunity for them to come together to hear from our registrar, to hear from Joe, to hear from other leaders in academic affairs about what's going on, to share their opinions. Our advisors are invited to serve on committees. Here we use the EAB platform. And so advisors were a part of that implementation team. They're a part of the leadership team now. And so they're constantly sharing their thoughts. We also have advisors who take what they're learning through their student meetings and recommending new approaches. Our college life coaches, and so within CARE, we have college life coaches, which provide some of that additional support. One of them recently said, "Hey, I've been hearing from my students who are now seniors that, you know what, college life coaching was great for me in the second year, but I'm really struggling preparing to go into this adulting thing." And so that college life coach is working on, a launch program or initiative where they talk about real life skills that the students need to know. And so we continue to support their ideas. Even at the advising first level, those advisors are coming together monthly to share, new updates from their colleges. Because one of the things we also know about college students is that they will move across majors. Sometimes those majors happen to be in the same college, other times they're not. So our advisors are sharing pertinent information with their colleagues to best support those students. And so we found that, by allowing our advisors to adapt practices that make sense for them, it's been really helpful for our students. They develop forms that they tend to share with their colleagues. Moving virtual created a lot of opportunity to innovate with how we reach students. And I recently sat in on, an interview for the person who was selected as our new program manager for training with our advisors. And he shared amazing ideas for how he, made documents that they typically use in meetings more interactive, more engaging. And so we do see our advisors investing in their own learning and development so that they can then be successful and support our students in new ways.
Great. Thank you, Deontay. I know this is a topic that Kathleen, you care very much about. I'd love to hear
I
any thoughts
do.
you'd like
I
to.
do. Of course, I'm a little biased because I'm a proud graduate of Florida State University and grew up professionally there. But I think, exactly what Deontay is saying is that we really want to have these structures in place. And what I've learned over the years is that if you don't have something structured, the likelihood of it happening is it's just not going to work. Like you have to identify things, you have to name them, and then you also have to implement them with a very strong commitment and structure. And so what Deontay really was referring to was the career advancement plan at FSU. And I just want to say that we're not there yet at the University of Oklahoma. This is my big initiative for this coming year. We've had some, obviously during COVID, and we've had some political changes where we weren't able to implement that advancement plan for our advisors. So what it did, it gave us an opportunity to meet with leaders around the country who have implemented these advancement plans. And I want to just say that what I witnessed by meeting with the people at Florida State was unbelievable, because it's not just about, okay, you put this time in, so we're going to advance you. It was really about how can you create your own academic advising identity where you are growing as a leader. You are really just thinking about what issues matter to you and developing those, whether that's a presentation at a conference or that's something that you're going to present to your colleagues. It's also about developing people as leaders in training, and the training levels are incorporated into the advancement levels. So training on different modalities, training on what are the nuances of different student populations and how can advisors understand those. And so then when we elevate advisors to the next level, we're confident that they've had that training. And so I just want to say that FSU's model is the model that we're really looking at, because it incorporates all of it in a really beautiful, seamless way.
Thank you, Kathleen. I really appreciate that feedback about our work at FSU, and we really do value our advisors and our team. And the career ladder we established has been wonderful for our institution. And you shared many details about it. And just to add some more, as our advisors move up each level, it also is accompanied with salary increases to provide continued professional advancement for them as they excel in their work. Okay. The next two how-to steps on the recommendation are about meeting student needs, and particularly understanding what students need and whether there are gaps and overlaps in our current supports. I'd like to hear some examples, if you can, from your programs that show how you are designing your systems to meet student needs. Deontay, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. I'll say that I inherited some great processes for how to identify student needs, thanks to my predecessor, to Daryl. And so one of those that was very beneficial this year for me in this role was the survey that we do to our incoming Care Summer Bridge students. That survey allows us to understand what's the student's current situation. Are there essential or urgent needs, vital needs that we need to address for them, such as housing, access to technology, transportation? to even get here. And so that survey is so important. And we also know that each incoming class will face different needs. I can imagine that, that survey evolved last year with the onset of a pandemic. And so it's important for us to always reach out to understand what is the new cohort experiencing and how can we address that. That survey also informs the programming that we do for students in that transition piece. And so, if we know we have students who are seeking access to gap housing between the semesters, we need to work with our colleagues over in university housing to figure out what are the options for them. One of the big pieces that came up this year was, students have been in virtual learning for a period of time, most of them. And so how do we support them in navigating being back in an in-person class for some of those who had that on their schedules, or sharing a space with someone? And so the survey allows us to truly understand how they are showing up to our campus and what do we need to do to support their transition. We've also, used this information to adopt a case management model for some of our students when appropriate. Our Unconquered Scholars program is a great example of that. And this program works with our students who were previously a part of the foster care system, wards of the state, relative care, experiencing homelessness. And so this allows us to identify some of those students early on and connect them with a single point of contact. And so they work with the same staff member throughout their experience at Florida State. And we're able to address, the transportation needs. We will get bus tickets. We will figure out airfare, whatever we need to do to make sure that student is able to be here and be set up for success. One of our amazing staff members will make rounds to the bus station. She will be there no matter the time they are coming to make sure that student does not have to arrive to campus alone. And so that's some of the approaches that we're able to take because of that survey that we send out ahead of time to our students. And that's just with care. We also collaborate with our Division of Student Affairs, who has a much larger survey that goes out to all incoming students. And we can learn some similar pre-college background and experiences that they have. We can then work with the group of folks who are around that table to figure out, what do we need to change about our service delivery? Is there anything more that we can be doing now that we understand who this cohort is? Again, technology continues to be a big piece. Our students had access to laptops, Chromebooks, tablets through their school districts over the past year, and a number of them are now had to return those. And so, we had to work across the university to make sure that there were devices available to them. And thanks to the library and our ITS, our information technology services, those students will not experience a gap in access to devices. And so that survey helped us to understand that. We also learned that students still have, real concerns about coming back to in person. And so continue to make sure we have programming and events that can engage students from a remote or a virtual perspective, as well as are things that we learned through those surveys.
Great. Thank you, Deontay. Tadaro, how does your team at UConn go about assessing students' advising related needs?
Yeah, I think, it's very important. That survey piece is really critical, getting the students' voice. Here at UConn, like I said before, we have our robust advising platform. It does a thing we call it the 60-second survey. And this is where we have questions embedded that when a student logs in to make an advising appointment or to review some of the information on their mentoring module, student group module, they'll be prompted for that 60-second survey that goes beyond academic advising. It really goes to the heart of their engagement and their time at UConn and what's going on in their life, a snapshot of what's happening at that moment. Advisors get that information and they get red flags that if a student says, I'm not happy at UConn, or I think I'm going to leave, they'll get those red flags and be able to see, let's have an intentional conversation where the surveys we send out to our students to talk about food insecurity. We'll be able to know that students on certain campuses, as I said, we have 5 campuses, students on certain campuses may experience food insecurity more than others, and be able to try to direct support and resources around that. to really help them to be successful. But I think one of the other pieces that is so important is to get qualitative information. This is where we really get to the heart of what our students need. Advisors get such great feedback from their one-on-ones and their group meetings with students. We take that feedback to really craft intentional supports based on the themes and the trends we're seeing. We also use our FYE courses to really get more of that student feedback. Over 93% of all UConn first-year students take an FYE course. And it's largely taught by staff with advisor responsibilities. We have peer mentors embedded in the courses as well. So they're designed so that we would get feedback. We have intentional conversations, but also the peer mentors would have one-on-one meetings to really get more information and to hear what the students are experiencing throughout the term. So you get more than just a snapshot, you get a full picture of what's going on. We've used that information to refine some of our services. We've developed new programs and things. We've actually even created themed first-year experiences courses around some of those needs, like our new first-generation first-year experience course to really hone in on some of the issues that that population deals with as opposed to continuing generation students. For our targeted underrepresented students enrolling in one of our 5 summer bridge programs, we use both surveys and qualitative processes. We survey them, as Deontay taught, we survey them prior to their arrival. We make sure their advisors can get that information. Their advisors get that to help support their transition and their academic engagement when they get here. We have community leaders. These are peer mentors who are living with them during the summer experience. They have one-on-ones and group meetings, and they discuss transition needs. And if there are any critical issues, they rise that to their advisors to make sure the advisors can have targeted interventions to help support those students. And we really make sure that this whole picture helps that population in both academic and non-academic needs. I think it's very important also to take institutional data and use that as part of the assessment of our students' needs. And not just looking at data as a whole. We really want to take disaggregated data and use that to be able to direct additional advising support to students who need it more. For example, if we saw that our first generation college students don't do well in particular gateway courses. And so what we've done is we've pushed out communication campaigns to these students surrounding specific resources and activities that the communication is tailored to them as first gen and their identity as a first gen student. We push the supplemental instruction. We've also built learning communities and FYE courses that target certain majors and certain populations based on historical data and student feedback. Like I said, our advisors are very, in ISS, go beyond academic advising and really want to focus on that holistic and broader support. And so all of this information, quantitative and qualitative data, really helps us to hone in on how to best support the student and best support their needs, whether it's an advising need or a basic need to help them succeed in higher ed.
Thank you, Tadaro. Kathleen, is there anything you'd like to add here?
I'm just getting so inspired by hearing from Deontay and Tadaro about what they're doing. And that's the beauty of this field, is we can always evolve, we can always get better. And it's such a community that people are always willing to share and inspire each other. And I love that. I think the only thing I want to add is that we took a little bit of a different approach when we were thinking about, and I love structure, is how can we structure our academic life coaching program to hone in on what I call the persistence themes. And so I was really wanting to come up with a model, and I already had a name for it, Coaching to Complete, that we would really clearly articulate what it is that our students were facing so that we could turn around and focus our training with our coaches and our advisors on these topics. So we started in this big conference room over lunch a few years ago, and we brought people who are really interested in this project, who were coaches, to start with what are our students facing, what are the themes, what are the issues, what are the challenges, what are they grappling with, what are the pressures, where are they excelling, all of this great talk, but from grassroots frontline staff and people who are working directly with students. And I'll just remember that very first day, there were probably 1,000 words on the board and 1,000 columns. And then we condensed it down into 8 themes, 8 persistence themes. And then we turned around and we articulated what we want our students to be able to know and what we want them to be able to do surrounding those themes. So for like the financial aid space, for them to really understand how their financial aid works and how to access scholarships and, you know, really building that financial confidence. And so instead of focusing on what our students don't know or don't do, what can we do to empower them to move in the same direction, empower our teams, our support teams to help, again, to help these students manage these difficult topics. And so, so here we are, we've got this model that's beautifully articulated. I'm really proud of it, and the team is really proud of it. And we have 300 corresponding coaching questions around all of these different topics. And we made a decision early on that this was going to be an open source document, so people can find it very easily on our website, the ALC website, which is off the OU website. And I'm very happy to, you know, have people do whatever it takes to continue to support students on their own campuses, just knowing that this was really a grassroots effort. And what I'm also realizing is that the themes, really, they have their own variations, but the themes are so similar from campus to campus. And even like over generations, the themes stay consistent. You know, how do you make a transition from high school to college? How do you manage all of the competing responsibilities that you're having to manage? How do you suddenly learn how to budget and manage your resources? How do you choose the right major and the right career path? How do you find motivation and really fight those, you know, procrastination habits? Like, those are things that I think all of us as people grapple with. And so being able to support our students in the same way has been really valuable and really meaningful.
Great. Thank you all. And I know when we were developing this practice guide, I spent a lot of time talking with the other members of the panel about the importance of making sure students were aware of all the resources and support available to them, but also making sure students actually use them, that they access the services and available resources. And I'm curious how you all do that. And Deontay, based on your experiences, do you have thoughts on some of the best ways to make sure students are aware of the resources available to them, and any techniques that are particularly helpful getting students to actually engage with them or make use of the resources or supports?
Yeah, and so, you know, a lot of it is, the first step is making sure they're aware. So providing that information. Through our summer bridge experience, we have a very intense push of introducing new students to a lot of resources and departments on campus through a 1-week orientation experience, but also continuously through our general body meeting format. Some of our great partners really take the opportunity to be innovative with how they share their information with our students. So, for example, our university libraries designed breakout rooms to introduce students to all of the different parts of the library, the services that are available to them. And so it's really unique to not be in a sit and get type of session, where they can actually are actively learning and doing things to remember where different sections are in the library, that there's research libraries for different content areas. So we invite those areas to come in and share their information themselves, because they are the content experts. From there, we also will do a push where we are sharing information. So departments, colleges will reach out to us to share specifically with our care students about programs that they are offering. Today, our Office of National Fellowships reached out to schedule time to talk about, you know, their department and how they can support students in applying for Gilman Awards that are coming up very soon. So we invite them in. We essentially serve as a validator to some degree of, this is a great department. We want you to connect with them. We also use Canvas sites. So each of our care entering year cohorts has their own Canvas space where we share that information as well with them. Built into that Canvas space is our way of tracking their engagement with some of those opportunities. We also utilize our EAB platform for tracking engagement with our academic advisors. So coming into meetings with them, Or this summer, we actually launched this with our care ambassadors, our peer mentors. Were able to track their one-on-ones or their small groups that they conducted with students to make sure that we had that documentation. We encourage students to get involved. We use models, so it's always great for them to see other students who've done great things. And so we have care students who are serving in the highest levels of leadership. The current Student Government Association president is a care student. And so we share models with them to really encourage them to want to get engaged, and also to know that there are resources across campus as well as in care. So whether it's tutoring, advising, coaching, or student organization, leadership opportunities, you can do that in care. You can also do that outside of care. And so we make sure that they know what is available, and that there are benefits to being involved and to making your mark here at Florida State.
Great. Thank you, Deontay. Kathleen, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think for me that the angle that I take is that you have to also include campus partners and representatives from various campus offices and bring them into your advising meetings. And so that's something that we have. We have a group called PACA, which is an all advisor group, and we meet monthly. And so instead of bringing in the campus professionals, and I learned this from Charlie Nutt, who's the executive director of NACADA, the outgoing executive director, he was like, let's try to minimize those, what he called like the talking heads trainings for advisors, because most likely, if someone has been in the seat for a while, they're already familiar with the workings of that office. And so what I wanted to do with my advisor trainings and my advisor meetings was to go deeper. And so what we do is we prepare before the financial aid people or the bursar people come in to our meetings. We have advisors really thoughtfully think of what are questions, like deep level questions that are going to benefit them when they serve in this referral agent role, so that they're familiar. They're not doing the work of the bursar's office, but they're very familiar with why things operate the way that they do, so they can effectively answer those questions from students. So I think that's really important, is that it's not just the people. And literally what attracted me to OU is that OU calls us, we're the OU family. And so members of offices are part of that family. So building that relationship across family members is really critical to me. And I think that that's something. So that's one thing I want to say, is that we go much deeper with building those relationships. The second thing is that we make an assumption, and I know all of us have encountered this, where you might refer a student over, let's say, the bursar's office, and assume that that's fine, that student is actually going to go and they're going to do what they need to do. And so what I've learned as a coach, because I'm actively coaching students myself, I've gone through the training, I just love my mentoring time, because as you become an administrator, you have less face time with students. So I really cherish my moments with my students. And I had a student who actually was eligible for what we're calling a retention scholarship. So we have something built into our advising note system that if the student breathes a word that they may be leaving the institution, there's a simple box that the advisor checks, and it's called intent to leave. And all of those get sent over to our retention working group, which I'm also an active member of. And we meet every week for 2 hours, and we comb through holistically each case of that student. Their financial aid notes, their advising notes, anything we can get, we survey those students as well and get a clear picture if there's anything we can do to keep those students enrolled. And so one of my coaching students, and one of the big things we do is we offer these retention scholarships. We have money set aside to do that, which is really an amazing return on investment when you think about it. So I had a student who was one of my coaching students, and I said, you are eligible for a retention scholarship. All you have to do is go to the bursar's office. And I just saw this look of fear, because when you meet with a student regularly, you hear in their voice if they're nervous about something. Like, you get to know them so well, you can read them really well. And I was like, what's the matter? And she just got really anxious. And I just said, well, what is it going to take for you to go over there? Like, what is holding you back? Just these coaching questions that we ask. And she said, would you be willing to go with me? And I thought, Yes, like we often think about walking a student over to the counseling center, but we need to expand that out. And so, of course, I'll go with you. And so we walked over to the bursar's office. I kind of felt like a mom. I sat in the waiting room and then we went in there together. But I had a relationship with the bursar representative, which my student could immediately see. And her anxiety just dissipated. She was able to hear it. She signed the contract. She was able to get that retention scholarship, and she completed her degree. So I just want to say that, I always say that there's the inner student, and we make a lot of assumptions about how students are doing. And until we really open up space for them to truly share what it means, then that's when we really find out how we can support them in the best ways. And a simple walk across campus is something that I know all of us are willing to do to help our students meet their goals and to be successful.
Thank you, Kathleen. And I know that when we were developing the practice guide, the panel often described that type of interaction as the warm handoff, the exchange between the different units on campus and the relationships that we've cultivated to enable that to happen. Tadaro, is there anything you'd like to add here?
Yeah. We have many of the same systems of support that Deontay mentioned about care at FSU on all 5 of our campuses in our system. One thing that I found so effective and very special here at UConn is our targeted system learning communities. Our learning communities here are made up of both residential and non-residential communities, and they're based on academic plans, career interests, or personal interests. About half of the students on our Stores campus, which is our primary campus here, are half of the first-year students are enrolled in a learning community. And it provides a system to really help connect them and inform them on resources and targeted advising. For example, we have a Scholars House learning community that's designed to support Black males through their journey at UConn. It's not just a first-year experience program either. It's for the learning community follows students throughout their entire 4 years at UConn. And so we look at trying to understand the needs of Black males in higher education, the resources and support and advising that's specifically designed to build community and support these students. We try to direct students to resources internally and externally that'll promote their development and really help them get a head start on engaging in experiential learning opportunities like research and studying abroad. Through that learning community, we partner with our Global Affairs Division and our UConn Foundation, where we've embedded a study abroad opportunity that focuses on the African diaspora. And we make sure that it's fully accessible to every single one of our scholars, regardless of their ability to pay for the experiences or not. We really do push a lot of these experiential learning opportunities through our learning communities, through our FYE services. We also have a very rich and robust system of cultural centers here at UConn that direct students to their resources and opportunities. Of course, they have the general body meetings, but they also do presentations in our FYE courses. They actually host training sessions with our advisors to make sure that students know about resources that they can take advantage of in the cultural centers. They do targeted email and communication campaigns, and they have a very, very extensive mentoring program with all of our cultural centers. And they really help to work with our advising community to promote resources, to give information and other opportunities. There's one other thing, when I think of what Deontay talked about in terms of the student engagement, we do leverage also our learning management system to be able to push and promote our students to be able to take advantage of resources. Whether it's in our FYE class where we may do kind of a scavenger hunt kind of engagement, or we'll host satellite classes in different places across campus, but also in promoting and pushing our students to go to activities and take advantage of resources, but using our learning management for them to now reflect on, now that you use that resource, how did this help you meet a personal or professional or an academic goal? And how can this now help you in terms of the goal that you've articulated for yourself? So giving them a reflection opportunity after they've used the resource, I think it's very important to help really make sure our students learn, not just about, but connect to it. Because at the end of the day, the students then become the mouthpiece to other students to tell them about the resources. Hey, I learned about this. You need to go here, because we all know in higher ed, they'll listen to each other before they listen to us.
Great. Thank you, Tadrell. Thank you all. I want to turn now to the last how-to recommendation, how-to step in the recommendation, which is to continuously monitor student engagement with academic and non-academic supports. And there are two parts to that step. And the first is to monitor student engagement of the advising supports, and the second is actually to use data to assess how are we doing, what does monitoring and assessment actually look like in your programs. Kathleen, maybe you can start us off and weigh in on this.
Assessment is so critical, yet it's something that's really challenging. And I think all of us grapple with it. And it's something that we've been doing at OU. So we have a centralized student satisfaction, just overall survey that captures perceptions of advising. And that's something that we pay very close attention to. But it's difficult to actually glean information that we can turn into action steps. I want to say that. So what we've been doing is I think one of the critical pieces is establishing an advising culture and having those structures in place and having those outcomes identified, because the work that I've been doing, a lot of work with NACADA and following their assessment practices and recommendations, is that you have to have learning outcomes for your students, but also outcomes for your academic advisors. And that takes time to build a very rich culture that is then reflected in those outcomes. So we're in the process of doing that now, that we're going to be piloting a universal assessment this year. And, it's challenging because we're all so over-surveyed, and it's just like, how do you create these? And I love the 60-minute reflections, 60 seconds, because that's really what we all have time for, 60 seconds. So that's what we're trying to do, something that almost reflects, how you would critique an Uber driver, but bring it into the higher ed space, because that's what we're all accustomed to. So I think that's really important. And then, I know how important it is, and this was mentioned, qualitative is critical. So our coaching assessment, we just launched one this past year to reflect those persistence themes. And the question we asked was, how did your academic life coach empower you to better manage this topic? And then the students rated those, and the ratings were very high. But then we also asked, just point blank, did you at any point consider leaving the institution prior to, the end of the year? And we counted about 25% of our students said yes. And then we asked, what was it that kept you enrolled? And this speaks to the power of academic advising and support and all the things we're talking about, the power of mentorship. And there's nothing greater than having someone on campus, which has been proven in the literature time and time again, that has the back of that student. They have their person. They have someone who knows them, someone who is committed to them, someone who will drop everything to assist them if they need that assistance in that moment. And again, it's just that critical piece of mentorship. And so we have a new provost at the University of Oklahoma, and I was meeting with our provost, and I was telling him about this approach, and he literally teared up, and he said, I remember that person in my life who absolutely invested and believed in me. And he said, I can't always recall the name of every faculty member I had, but I can remember that person. And I said, and isn't it incredible that we can start to really create this, be very intentional about building these mentoring relationships on campus. And so to have the data just actually display what we're trying to do was, again, just really encouraging for how we want to continue to grow this culture of coaching and advising and supporting all campus members to support our students in this way.
Great perspectives. Thank you, Kathleen. Deontay, would you like to follow up?
Yeah, and so in my time at Clemson, one of the areas that I had oversight for implemented a quick checkout survey that they would do at the end of their advising sessions. And so the student would stop by the front desk on their way out, answer those 4 questions, and go on with their day. And the questions were really simple. It was, asking about the purpose of their meeting, kind of around some thematic areas. did they resolve or get the information they needed? And then how was the relationship with their academic advisor or the person they were meeting with? You know, we adopted that model with our other units in our department as well, seeing the data that they were getting. And one of those questions was also about, you know, if that was the first meeting or if they were returning. And we saw that, you know, for the students who were having their purpose of that meeting met consistently, they were coming back. Their peers were starting to show up. And so we implemented that with the other areas in our department. And that's also something we're going to start here in CARE this upcoming academic year. We have, again, a brief 4-question survey just to learn how is that interaction. Rather than having the students do it right after they finish their meeting, we're going to randomly send this out to students. And so through the data, the system we use, we can run reports to see what day students met with advisors, who the advisor was. And so we'll send that out, you know, periodically throughout the month just to gather information. One of the things I learned in that quick survey is that sometimes the student needs to take a moment to reflect because the information they got, maybe it wasn't what they wanted to hear, but when they think about it, it was valuable. And so they can give us a more accurate understanding of their engagement once they've sat with that information for a while. So we'll be sending that out to learn more about the students' experience with our advisors, with our coaches, even with our staff who are just providing that general support. So we look forward to learning more about what we're doing well and how we can continue to improve. For some of that qualitative data that we all get through just listening and talking to students, we have this open forum essentially at the beginning of staff meeting where we talk about student trends, concerns, or issues, and it can be anything that our staff have encountered or they've heard from students, and we just take time and we share that. And you all could probably imagine that when one person shares, then another person's like, yes, I also talked to a student who was encountering this, or I had a student last week and this is what I did. And so it provides a space for us to share what's going on, how are we figuring out how to address it, or what do we need to share with our campus partners. So it really is helpful to have that space for our staff to speak with each other about what the students are experiencing. And then, you know, this goes to Kathleen's point about that person that we always remember. And it may not seem like an assessment piece initially, but we have a university advising award that our students are able to nominate someone for. And, you know, I'm proud to toot our horn and care that we've consistently had advisors nominated for that award. And there's a lot of qualitative data in those nomination letters where students are reflecting and recapping why this person is deserving of that. And we get to see the competencies that advisors have developed, the attention they're giving to their students, the innovation that they have. And so we're learning through those nominations. And I had a chance to, you know, of course, read what students said about our care advisors. And of course, I was not shocked at the greatness that they shared, but it's an opportunity for us to then take that and say, you know, this is what really great advising to some of our students looks like. And so how can we share that with our peers? And that's a form of assessment to me. So I'm really excited for the ways that we're able to pull information from various pieces of what the university has in place.
Great. Thanks, Deontay. Tadeo, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, let me, for a second, talk about my time when I was at Florida State. You know, we really wanted to use data to inform requirements around student participation. We set every year that students had to complete certain requirements based on their year in order for them to be considered active. And so what I did was conduct a regression analysis to see what GPA students tracked historic academic and non-academic engagement should have produced based on historical requirements that we had set. What we saw was students who participated in 2 activities and studied at a certain level should typically do so well. But students who did none of that, who didn't engage on campus, who did not study at the level that we kind of set, they were generally on academic probation. we found that when we set the requirements around 3 engagement activities and then standardized study hours across all students, that students overperformed in their GPA and actually excelled well beyond what the regression should have produced. And so that's an example where we use data to really inform how our students engage and how our advisors can stay on top of their engagement. But another piece is that life coaching Kathleen's been talking about. Life coaching at Florida State was traditionally a first-year program, but based on the retention data and the depth of support that we provided our first-year students, it was decided that we would make coaching a second-year program. Prior to coaching, 83% of our students were retained from second to third year. When we introduced coaching to the third year, over time, we saw a 10 percentage point increase in retention. Now, I referenced coaching because we know it was effective. The data told us that it's effective. But then we would hear from students saying, I wish I could keep getting coached after my second year. Even the ones who were hesitant when they first started always said, I want coaching after that. We didn't have the staff capacity, but what we decided was something I call coaching light. We added a scaled back version of this for our juniors. And we centered around those intentional and structured conversations about how to reach graduation and encouraging them to keep pushing forward and keep moving forward and validating them as first generation students, and then having conversations about their post-graduation goals. And what we saw is that these structured conversations that weren't as frequent as coaching is, but they were very structured and intentional, that it was so effective that by the time I left FSU, we saw a 40% increase in four-year graduation rates from the cohorts in 2011 to the cohort in 2016. Mm-hmm. We let data more inform us on how we should engage our students. We listened to our students and we looked at the results that coaching had, and we changed our processes based on that feedback.
That's great. Thank you, Tadero. And this is the last question I have for you all. And I know we've talked about a lot of people around campus who work with students and want to be involved in supporting students, and they have great intentions. I'm curious, though, about and your thoughts about why it's important to have clearly defined roles and responsibilities on campus, and how do you go about doing that for all those who want to be involved in supporting students and advising students?
Well, I'll start by saying, I welcome those who have a passion and a desire to support students. You want to find an opportunity to ensure they have the requisite training and the good information to direct students to the right and most capable supports on campus. But I always say you can teach skills, but you can't teach passion and heart. So those individuals who rise and try to help a student, they make significant impacts on the student's journey. Those are those people that, as Kathleen talked about, you remember after you finish college. My first job in higher ed was at a community college. So I'm a big proponent of cross-training and assisting to solve the problem if you can without directing students to multiple offices. But it's important that you have clear roles and responsibilities. For one, it helps students to better understand the functions of specific offices to assist their needs. And truly, it makes sure they get the appropriate and right help that they need. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure they're seeing someone who can see the complete picture of what's going on, not someone who has a limited view of their circumstances. But it also protects a staff member from burnout and protects them from being overtapped. Like I said before, students know who will help and they will flock to that person. But if this isn't their particular responsibility, it could really overburden that staff member, and which in turn leads the student to possibly being unserved. And for that staff member, it could damage them professionally. Again, I applaud the staff members who attempt to do that. You just want to taper it with making sure they have support and that the students can know whose offices or which supports are specifically designed for certain functions. You kind of talked about it earlier that our student success office staffs advisors who are more like generalists. They help with advising academic issues, but also non-academic related functions. It's almost like a one-stop shop, if you will, where students can go and have Go and find staff who have the knowledge and expertise to assist them or direct them to specific people, not an office, but a specific person who can help solve that issue they came in about. I think having a place where students know that if they don't know where to go, they can go there and talk to someone who can help them solve whatever that issue is. It can really help reduce students just going to anybody on campus that has a door open. I think it also is key to make sure you provide trainings on certain topics. Like we do at UConn, our central advising has open trainings for anyone who wants to have connections with students or who meet students, whether it's academic affairs, student affairs, in the different colleges or schools or support systems across campus. Our advising office opens trainings to all of them to really make sure that if you're the person that a student stumbles upon while they're searching for that support, you can at least have baseline information on how to direct them to the right support systems to help.
Yep. Great points. Thank you, Daryl. Kathleen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just think that institutions, that there are a lot of things that I think fall outside of our control when as advising leaders or just administrators. So I think it's important to think about what is within our control. And all of us can structure, we can select the advising approach that really represents who we want to be. And whether that's for us, it's academic life coaching. For another school, it may be developmental advising. For another school, it may be appreciative advising. Whatever it is, there are some incredible holistic advising models. Some people call it proactive advising, but to own that, to define that, to articulate that. And then out of that structure and out of that identity, I think it's important then that's how you make your hiring decisions. Exactly. I completely agree with Daryl is that you can train advisors on the information, and we're also training on the relational, which is all the coach training, and of course the conceptual. But, I always say advising is a calling, and student support work it provides a lot of meaning. And, I don't think there's any better profession personally. I just think that, so we have to make sure that we're hiring the right people, that we have a unified training system, and that is a coordinated training system across campus that also reflects our advising identity. And then the professional development work that we do, again, touches on what we're trying to do. Our monthly meetings reflect this identity. And then, of course, our assessment strategies reflect this identity. And I think once you do that, amazing things can grow. We just finished a bylaw document to absolutely document everything we're doing within our PACA community, which is, it's all really grassroots led. So all the things that we're doing, we've got vibrant communities, we've got councils, we've got all these different ways that people can get involved. We're doing a lot of active DEI work just for advisors, because there are specific needs that advisors are just, needing to be, like we call it our enrichment council, but just to enrich their work with students and become more understanding, more knowledgeable, more skilled, and more trained on how to serve the needs of all of our students. And when you do that, amazing things can happen.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Deontay, you want to close us out?
Yeah, Kathleen and Daryl basically summed it up, and it's important that we have these defined roles and responsibilities to support student success. At the end of the day, it comes back to making sure our students are able to thrive on our campuses. Within CARE, we're lucky that we have a financial wellness coordinator that our students can come and talk to. This person is trained in all things financial aid, but we know that there's a limit to what we want them to do. So we have very defined roles and scopes of their work. But one of the benefits is that they can triage some of those low-level issues for students, or they can take information and say, I'm going to pass this off directly to this person who handles it on the financial aid side. And so it really supports them in having a positive experience and knowing that there is someone who's helping them navigate this. I also think, part of it is that relationship building and making sure we're all aware of what's happening. We meet regularly with, assistant deans, associate deans, and even deans. The College of Business dean has had meetings with our CARE leadership to talk about how can we support first generation students together. And from that meeting, we found opportunities for them to provide direct support for accounting, which is one of those gateway courses for our students. And so, we have the space, but they have the GAs with the expertise and some of the other financial resources. And so we're working together to make sure that we can support students. And so part of it is just coming to the table and having those conversations. There may be times as we talk about defined roles and responsibilities, we may have to have MOUs, memorandums of understanding or agreements with some of our areas that these are the actions that CARE will take, and these are the actions of the department. But the purpose is still focused on student success. We just have to have it more defined for some areas than others. And lastly, I just think about the camaraderie that we have. Like, we know that we're all in this together. Tutoring here at FSU can happen in a number of spaces. Our CARE tutoring is actually accessible to any Florida State student. Now, we are designed to support specifically our first gen students, but we will not turn away a student that needs assistance. Similarly, our CARE students can go to the library, or they can go to the Academic Center for Excellence to receive tutorial assistance. With that, we have different approaches to how we do tutoring, but we're constantly talking to each other. And now we recently launched tutoring.fsu.edu for all students to be able to go to one location and see what's available, which subjects are offered in CARE versus ACE, what are the hours of operation, is it individual versus group? So, having those conversations and opportunities to engage allow us to really expand our support for student success.
Great. Okay. Well, Kathleen, Daryl, and Deontay, thank you all so much for sharing your expertise with us today. It is really wonderful to have you as colleagues. And I know I speak on behalf of the entire advising community nationally. We are so grateful to have your leadership. Thank you all that you do for students and for higher education in this country.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us. It's really an honor.
Honored to be here with you all. And I think at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation back over and take it away.
All right, thanks, Joe. Before I close out the video, I too want to thank our panelists, Joe, Deontay, Kathleen, and to Daryl. Thank you so much for this lively conversation. It has been so good to hear all the work that you all are doing on your respective campuses, and how even on this call today or on this webinar, how you are taking what you've learned from your prior roles and from each other and adopting them for use on your campus. I loved hearing all the personal examples that you all shared, and there were so many great takeaways. So thank you all again. This conversation is a wonderful kickoff for this Practitioners' Perspectives video series for the Practice Guide. To our audience, the Practice Guide on Effective Advising for Post-Secondary Students can be accessed through the What Works Clearinghouse website. We will continue the conversation in the next video on recommendation 2, which will be moderated by our expert panelist, Donna Linderman. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to connect with Joe via email. His email address is on the slide. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. And we really do hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.